And now to breaking news from Moscow, where NBC's senior international correspondent Keir Simmons just spoke exclusively with Kremlin press secretary Dmitry Peskov about 2 missing American veterans we've been reporting who are missing in Ukraine. And a viewer note, Russia is cracking down on journalists and limiting what reporters can say under threat of imprisonment. Keir joins us now from Moscow. Keir, what did you learn from Dmitry Peskov?
Well, Andrea, this was a wide-ranging interview lasting more than an hour that touched on the food crisis sparked by the crisis in Ukraine. We talked with Dmitry Peskov, too, about President Putin's health. He insisted that the president is healthy and pointed to a forum that the president took part in last week that lasted more than 3 hours. But you're right, we asked extensively about the cases of Alex Drueke and Andy Wen, those 2 American veterans who, it emerged last week, had been held in Ukraine. And this is the first time that the Russian government has commented on their cases. Take a listen.
Russian television has broadcast interviews with 2 Americans captured in Ukraine, Alex Drueke and Andy Wen. Where are they? Who is holding them? And what happens next?
Well, so they are they're soldiers of fortune, and they were involved in illegal activities on the territory of Ukraine. They were involved in firing and shelling our military personnel. They were endangering their life. And they should be responsible. They should be held responsible for those crimes that they have committed. Those crimes have to be investigated. So they are being held in a due place, to ensure that the investigation of their crimes is being completed.
By Russian authorities or by Donetsk authorities?
By due authorities.
Are they prisoners of war? Are they prisoners of war?
I wouldn't start explaining the juridical side of their capture. The only thing is clear. So they have committed crimes.
What are the crimes they've committed? Because obviously, as you know, under the Geneva Conventions, fighting in a conflict is not something that you can be tried for. So what are the crimes you're talking about?
But they are not a Ukrainian army. They are not a subject to Geneva Convention. They are not.
You don't know that.
They are not members of the Ukrainian army.
You're certain that they weren't enlisted. You believe they weren't enlisted in the Ukrainian army.
It will be investigated in due course.
So you're trying to establish whether they were enlisted.
But Geneva Conventions cannot be applied for soldiers of fortune.
And Andrea, we also asked about the cases of 2 more Americans held here in Russia, Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner. Brittany Griner, of course, the WNBA star who was arrested traveling into Russia, accused of having a vape pen with hashish. It has been suggested that those 2 Americans are being held by the Russians with the ambition of exchanging them in some way, with Russians being held in the United States. I pressed Dmitry Peskov on that. Take a listen.
She was coming to take part in sport in Russia, effectively trying to build bridges through sport. It's a terrible message, isn't it, that she should be arrested and held and face potentially a jail sentence.
It is also a terrible message to bring some forbidden essences and materials to this country while trying to build some bridges. And it is prosecuted by Russian laws. And Russia is not a single country in the world that have quite a strict laws in that sense. There's a number of countries where you cannot enter with any drugs. Actually, it is prosecuted by law. So we can do nothing about that.
The special presidential envoy for hostage affairs is now leading the US effort to secure Brittany Griner's release. So the US government is now approaching this as a hostage situation.
I would strongly disagree with that. We cannot call her hostage. Why should we call her hostage?
What about...
She violated Russian law. And now she's being prosecuted. It's not about being a hostage.
And Andrea... This was a wide-ranging interview. We'll have more on Nightly News later today. I asked him about a statement by the NATO Secretary General and the British Prime Minister suggesting that the West should prepare for a long conflict here. Perhaps this is the one thing that Russia and NATO agree on, because he said that he too thinks that this will be a long crisis, as he put it. Andrea?
Well, this is really bad news about Brittany Griner, because the State Department had been hoping that the delay again meant that perhaps they were not going to prosecute her under their criminal laws. So that's bad news. And also, I'm really fascinated by him saying that the two Americans are not subject to the protections of the Geneva Conventions, the international treaties for prisoners of war. That's fairly ominous.
That's right, Andrea. And actually, I asked him, I'm afraid, also about the case of two British nationals who've also been arrested and were sentenced to death by a prosecutor in that Donetsk region. And I actually said to him, will you commit that these Americans will not face the same fate? And he said he was not prepared to commit to that, although he did say that he was speaking on behalf of the Kremlin, so tried to suggest that it wasn't the Kremlin's responsibility, if you like, Andrea.
Keir Simmons, with one of your news-making exclusive interviews out of Moscow, a tough beat, and you've done it again. We'll look forward to watching more throughout the day and on Nightly News. Thank you, Keir.